Hi friends, thank you so much for joining me today. I will be sewing up the Daffodil Tee from Peony Pattern Company. If you're not familiar with this pattern company, I definitely recommend checking them out. The information will be listed down below in the description box for you. The Daffodil Tee is actually part of one pattern that comes with both a diaper cover as well as a children's tee. Today we're going to be focusing on just the tee part, and I will do a follow-up video of the diaper cover for you. What we are going to do is we are going to lay our front and back pattern pieces right sides together, which means that I'm going to be laying the patterned piece together like this. The plain side of the fabric is called the wrong side, so you want the right sides together. We are going to line it up at the shoulder seams. I'm going to pop some pins to hold it in place for me. There's 1, 2. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. And now I'm going to pin the sides together as well. Now that we have the pattern pieces pinned together, we are just going to sew across the shoulder seams as well as down the side seams. The seam allowance on this pattern is 1/2 inch, so just make sure to go down that seam allowance. For my particular sewing machine, I am using a zigzag stitch. The length of my stitch is a 2.6 and the width of my stitch is at a 1.5. Now that we've got the front and the back put together, we are going to take our serger and we're just going to trim and finish off the seams on these shoulders as well as the seams, side seams of our shirt. You don't need to use a serger if you are sewing with knit. That's just kind of a general rule. The reason being is that knit does not unravel. So if you can see here, I am pulling on this fabric and it is not coming apart. So you're welcome to leave it raw. However, I do like a nice finish for my garments. I know I've mentioned this before, but you do want to make sure that you never use pins on your garment when you run it through the serger. I've done that one time before and it completely broke off my knife for the serger, which is not a huge big deal, but it could have definitely done some damage to it. The next step that we are going to be doing is sewing a gathering stitch along the top edge of our sleeves. We are going to make sure to stay in between both of the notches that we made. To make a gathering stitch, you're going to make sure that you are on a straight stitch and that the length of your stitch is as far as it will go and that your tension is all the way up. So I'm putting it at a 9 and I am doing a 4.8 for my stitch length. You want to make sure that the tails of your gather is kind of long so that you don't lose them when you're gathering your sleeve up. So as you can see, it's kind of already ruffled it for us. We're going to do the same thing for the other sleeve. Now that the top has a gathering stitch, we are going to add a gathering stitch along the bottom of our sleeves. You want to avoid 1/2 inch on each side of the sleeve. So your sleeve should look something like this. You can already tell that it's taking its shape. Now that the gathering stitches are both on the top and the bottom of the sleeve, we are going to take the short raw edges of our sleeves, and we are just going to pin them together, and we're going to sew along that short end. You want to avoid all your gathering threads. Make sure that they're out of the way when you do this. Our next step is to take the cuffs for the sleeves and go ahead and fold them in half so that the short ends meet. And then you're going to take a pin or clip and just clip them together. I've already done that here. And you are just going to sew across the short sides. Once you have the cuffs sewn, you're going to open up the seam right here in the middle. You can use an iron to flatten it, or you can use your fingers to kind of flatten it up. And then you're going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, and you're just going to create like a little donut. And as you can see, here's what it looks like. The inside, the wrong sides are together. You're going to do this with the neckband and the other sleeve cuff. So the neckband is created the exact same way that the sleeve bands are. So you'll use the same technique here. Okay, our next step is to add the cuffs to the sleeves. I'm going to find the little seam, and I am trying to find the front side of my cuff. By doing that, I'm just going to take that seam and fold it in half right along there, and that shows me where the front middle of part of my cuff is. I'm just going to take a little pin and just mark it. Same thing with my sleeve. I'm going to find the middle of the front of the sleeve. We have a little notch that we made, the middle notch of the sleeve. I'm just kind of estimating where the middle is, and it looks to be about here. So that's going to help me line up my sleeve. To gather, you're just going to pull the bobbin threads and just only slightly pull. You don't have to yank really hard. You don't want to bust those gathering stitches that we made, and it's going to gather it up. You just kind of adjust your gathers by moving them around. It's very easy. And then you're just going to slide your cuff right on top. So that seam that I was talking about just a minute ago, right here, I'm just going to attach that to the seam of the sleeve. So right here, I'm just lining it up and just going to pin it in place. Okay, here's the pin I made earlier to say where the middle of the sleeve is, and I'm just going to match up my pins and fix my cuff because it kind of moved out of the out of its half. Okay. All right. Adjust those gathers so that they're nicely distributed around the sleeve. Add another pin and do the same thing for the other side. Once you got it all nicely and pinned, you're just going to sew. And then what I did, because I like to serge my garments, is I just took a serger and without the pins and just serged around that sleeve. When you're done, this is what it's going to look like when you turn it right side out. It looks pretty cute. I'm really chuffed about this. It's going to be absolutely adorable once I add it onto the tee. Now that we got the cuffs added to our sleeves, we are going to add our sleeves to the t-shirt. You're going to insert the sleeve right sides together with our shirt. So the sleeve is just going to slide inside our t-shirt that we had put to the side. So like this. This short little seam that we made earlier is going to be attached to the side seam right here. And then the notch that we made when we cut out our pattern right here in the middle is going to line up with the shoulder seam. In between that, you are just going to gather your notches to fit the sleeve. So just make sure that you add a lot of pins, and then you're going to go ahead and sew it on. And then just to show you, here is one that I've already done. I added pins across the part that is not gathered, and then after I did that, I gathered up the area in between the notches and then evenly distributed my gathers. So now it's ready to be sewn. Okay, so now that we have the sleeves attached, our next step is the neckline. What you're going to do is you're going to want to quarter off your neckband. I have already added pins onto these spots that are the, here is the little seam. I found the middle of the front, and then I took those 2 pins, I brought them together, so the seam where we added the neckband raw edges together and sewed those, you're just going to bring those pins together, and then you're going to find your side seams. So right here. Same thing, we are going to do that with our neckband, our neck. So we are going to take the front and the back. To do that, we are going to take the side seams and we are going to put them together to find the middle, which is right here. So here is one side. I'm going to add a pin. Okay, do that for the other side. So here my side seams for my shoulders put together, and here is the middle of this piece, and I'm going to add a pin there. Okay, now the shoulder seams are not the middle, so what you're going to do is you're going to take both your middles that you found on the front and the back piece, and you are going to stretch it out like this. See if you can see it better this way. Okay, so here's your middle, and then you're going to find the middle piece. So I'm going to align those up, and here just a little it's really close to the shoulder seam, but here is the middle part that I'm looking for. The higher neckline is the back, so I'm going to take that pin with the seam and line it up, match my pins together, and just attach it. The neckband's kind of getting wonky here. Alright, that front, I'm going to match my little pins together and attach it here. And I'm going to do the same thing for the remaining pins. Match them up, pin in place. There we go. And now I'm just going to go ahead and sew around where I just attached it, and then take my serger and just finish it off. Now that I have the neckband done, as you can see, I went ahead and added a nice little stretch stitch to the bottom of the band on the outside just to keep it nice and flat. And now all we have left to do is hem the bottom of the top, and we are done. To hem the bottom of the shirt, I'm just going to take it and wrong sides together, put it about ½ an inch up, kind of fold it. You can take an iron and create a memory crease right there, and then all you're going to do is just pin it in place, and then you're just going to sew along the bottom. You want to make sure that you are still using that stretch stitch when you sew this. Okay, here it is. Here is our completed daffodil tee.